Kevin, Edge, welcome to the Jedburgh podcast.
Thanks, Fran. Nice to see you again. It's been a while.
It has been a while, and we have reconnected over the last several months. And this, for me, is a really unique and special episode. Number one, this is going to be our New Year's resolutions episode. So at the end of this, I'm going to ask you what your New Year's resolution is. So you need to start thinking about that right now. But second, this episode is with an old friend. One of my oldest friends, one of my first people that when I entered the Army brought me under their wing and said, "Come here, young man. You have no idea what the hell you're doing. You keep opening your mouth. It's not always right, but just let me show you the way." And we shared so many painful, sometimes unnecessarily painful days together in early days in the military, your, I'd say, middle to later career days in the military. But you have been a huge supporter of the podcast since we launched this. You recently came on with 18 Alpha Fitness, your company that you started a couple years ago. We're going to talk all about it, but you came on as a sponsor, and I couldn't be more thankful and grateful to be repartnered with you. But really, as we talk about leadership in this podcast, you have been somebody that I looked up to as a leader. It was peer leadership at the time that we first met, but I woke up every day and I thought to myself, I cannot piss this guy off. I cannot do anything that upsets him. I need to be like him. I need to emulate him because he sets the standard. And to spend that time with you, to be here today, so many years later, to still have the friendship that we have, I truly thank you. And I thank you for joining me here today.
Well, I really appreciate that, Fran. And you still know I would choke out 99.9% of everybody at OCS.
Well, we went to OCS together, and that was crazy. And so that was what, 2004. We 2004. Met in OCS. You had been prior service and you were transitioning over, and I was a young, fresh out of basic training. I can't even call, I was not an officer at that point yet because I was still what they call the candidate, right? We wore the ascots, and we get thrown into this OCS class. It's like 9 weeks of basic training. I was in college before that, and there was about 17 or 19 of us who had come out of college, and everybody else was prior service. And we were like what they called the shake and bake. And then there was the elder statesman like you who looked at us and said, "You guys have no idea what you're doing."
None. But hop on board. We'll teach you the way, young Padawan.
I don't know at times how you guys dealt with us. I want to start with 18 Alpha Fitness, though. We're going to get into your long-tooth military career a little bit later, but you developed 18 Alpha Fitness as a platform for aspiring special operators, Green Berets, Navy SEALs, MARSOC Raiders, Rangers, Air Force special operators, to find tailored programs for each of these assessment and selection courses. Fitness and a high level of fitness is so critical when you go to these selection courses. You say, quote, 18 Alpha Fitness isn't just personal training. We make warriors. We prepare men and women to endure the rigors of special operations training or other high performance environments. Can you talk about 18 Alpha Fitness, talk about the training, talk about the theory behind it?
Yeah, so, this last November 26th was 34 years a part of DOD that I've been a part of, right?
That's
so
it?
Just that. That's it. A couple days. And about 4 years ago, when I was working with Go Ruck and I was a strength coach simultaneously for the Air Force, I was like, man, I think I can, put my hands on more people if I start 18 Alpha Fitness. And I started with, paper Excel spreadsheets, just put out the word through the pipeline, on social media. And I started 18 Alpha Fitness, and I had very few, a handful of people that started off. But the philosophy was to get these guys ready, right? And at the time, I had a couple guys that were getting ready for the Go Ruck selection, which, if you don't know, is 48 hours of probably the worst hell thing that you could ever imagine. If you ever watched that, it's pretty brutal. But there's standards.
I don't know
right?
because I don't want to do it.
Oh, I don't. I watched it. I watch it every year, and I'm like, this is absolutely insane. I would never do that. It's not how our selection is, but it's unique. You know what I mean? They call it the hardest endurance event in the world. Which if you see
Wow.
it's absolutely insane. But So there's standards to get to those things, you know what I mean, just to get in. And it's a PT test, you got to run a 5 mile in 40 minutes, do so many push-ups, so many sit-ups, just to get in, right? And so you have guys that reach out to you and like, hey, I want to do selection. I'm like, well, okay, let's test from the beginning. Where you at? And some of them is like, running a 48 minutes, 5 miles is like, whoo, boy, we got some work to do here, So you develop a plan. And I got some really good friends that, when I was working for the Air Force, that are really good runners. I got an old coach. His name is Orb Greenwall. That's a swimmer. He was in the 76 Olympics, right? And you ask them for help to help develop, what have you been doing over these years to get to where you're at? How did you get these guys to where they're at? And, you just pick their brain and you put it all together, right? And I went out to, when I was with the Air Force, I probably did 30 different certifications just to figure out what is best for these guys. And so mine top ones are mobility, breathing, right? Those two are probably the most critical things, and you learn over, especially when you become older like myself, that mobility is probably the biggest key to longevity, to not just being an operator, but to way of life, right? I had a philosophy that when my kids when I have become a grandparent, I want to be able to pick up my grandkids, and be able to still play with them.
Yeah, look at Tom Brady.
Right, yeah. Yeah,
it's all about mobility, flexibility. I mean, and he's like the number one quarterback in the league this year.
Right. Yeah, it's pretty insane. But yeah, so you just, over the years, when I started my, we'll go into the CrossFit journey back in 2005, when I was in Iraq, and before CrossFit blew up to what it is now. When I went to my first certification, there was less than 10 affiliates in the world.
Wow.
So, and then, before that, when I was at OCS, I started becoming a personal trainer in '98. So fitness, has been a part of my life.
Well, that's been something that you've gained certification for, the better part of the last 20 years. And, just to quantify that, right, you have personal trainer certification. You've developed CrossFit programs for multiple Special Forces group, including our alma mater, 10 Special Forces group, also 1st Special Forces group. You're certified strength and conditioning specialist, an Olympic weightlifting coach, a powerlifting coach, a licensed massage therapist, a fascial stretch therapy specialist, and a kin stretch therapist specialist. So many certifications in this world, because that's always been a part of you and something that you've wanted to do. But how come? Because this did start early on, this kind of passion for fitness, this passion for human performance. We'll talk about it certainly through your career in the military and special operations, but why jump into this need and this desire to help yourself and help people gain this high level of physical fitness?
So the biggest thing is I was 21 years old. I was home on leave, and my dad wanted to start working out. And at the time, he was 48 years old. It was in an April time frame, and he had just stopped smoking in the beginning of that year. And he started smoking when he was 13, because everybody in the 40s, 50s, and 60s smoked. I'm sorry, everybody and their mama smoked. I think that the smoking thing stopped in like late 80s to where everybody smoked. And so we went to a facility. My cousin was the manager at it. It's called Omni 41 Sports Complex. And me and my dad were working out. And at the time, I was in Germany, and I was coming home transitioning. And we're at the gym, and we're working out, and I run him through a normal old school push and pull workout, and then he liked racquetball, so we did about
bench squats,
well,
lateral
we just did
rows,
right, and then we went and played racquetball. My cousin came and joined us while we were playing racquetball, and then we're walking up to the locker room to change to go home, and my dad grabs my arm, and he's like, "Go get your cousin," and I'm like, "Shit." So I sprint, because I knew something's wrong. When my dad grabs me, he's like, "Go get your cousin." I went sprint to get my cousin, and I said, "Something's wrong with my dad." And he just ran by the front desk, and he's like, "Call 911. My uncle's having a heart attack." So we ran upstairs, and ambulance took, it seemed like forever. But my dad had a triple bypass.
Oh my gosh.
And so, so that's like the kickoff of why the fitness to where I am now, and to this day, just because of that moment.
We spoke for a second about, kind of these regimented programs, right? When you look at, let's do bench and buys, right? Let's, let's get on there and do lats. But a lot of what you're focused on then and now and throughout your career in fitness and personal development has really been more about functional fitness. I think about the days at 10 Special Forces Group, the development of what we call the Thor 3 program, working with NSCA. Everything was about functional fitness. How do I have movement? How do I have these things that you mentioned: mobility, breathing, heart rate variability, strength, stamina, cardiovascular strength, and also mental training. And we'll talk about that as well. All these workouts that you're putting together, these programs that you're putting together for the different selection events, they're all customized. So how does that work?
Well, first you got a desired end state, right? You know what the desired end state. You're not going to have the MARSOC or the SEALs or even some of the AFSCs for the Air Force doing SF selection, because we know SF selection is more wrecking than anything, and carrying heavy stuff over long distance for 21 days. Whereas, the SEALs and MARSOC and the Air Force, they're going to swim, right? So you got to know what their desired end state is, and then put a program together that fits that need, that fits that scope, so they can pass that with ease.
All of these physical events, right? All of these selection events have a high degree of physical stress that's imposed. But the mental side of this, right? We talk about mental stress. And one of the reasons why I think physical fitness is so important is because the more physically fit you are, the longer that burn is, the longer it takes for you to actually get to a fatigue level where you start to become mentally taxed. And although you're being thrown challenges, although you have to critically think, you have to problem solve, all of the downward spiral that they call it gets exacerbated when your body's in physical pain, when your legs hurt, your back hurts, and then you add into it being cold, being tired, being wet, being hungry, right? And then all of a sudden, if you lack physical strength, now that's all you're focused on. And when all I'm focused on is my physical condition and how bad I feel, well, now mentally and cognitively, I can't now focus on the task at hand. I can't problem solve. I can't find resolution. Can you talk about that for a minute and your experience in working with operators in these different fields, in the Army, in the Navy, and Marines? How do they look at the physical versus the mental aspects, and then how do you train to create that longer burn before somebody is actually mentally taxed?
So, and it's all about the programming, right? And I give basically everybody gets the first workout that they do is my push-up from hell workout. On paper, if you see the push-up workout, it's 12 different push-up movements, right? I
saw that in the program you sent me.
Yeah. That one right there, that's not only physical, but that's a mental thing. You got to actually think, holy shit. After like the six different movement, they're like, how am I going to finish this, right? And what I want them to do is think about how they're going to get to the end of that, right? And if you don't think how you can get to the end of something, or, it's just like that taxing, that cognitive, if you tax their body, you have to think through that process of how you're going to finish it, and then what are you doing? And when the guys hit me back, they're like, "Oh my God, that was so tough." I was like, "Yeah, I know, but what did you do, and what can you do to better the next time when you see that workout?"
And what are you thinking about in the moment, right? If I think back to selection, or I think back to Ranger School and these various schools and courses I went to, I always remember looking at people and just seeing mentally broken folks. And when I talk about that, I mean like just walking to the bathroom, right? They're limping, they're slumped over, their heads down. And I actually thought about those guys, and some of them were bigger than me. They were stronger than me. They were, smarter. And I was like, wow, that guy is broken. But not only is he broken, he's showing everybody. And you're in this selection event where they say you're always being assessed, right? And people don't realize that. And it's in any organization. It doesn't matter if it's in the military. And I talk about this with the corporations that I work with. Leaders are always assessing their teams. Teams are always assessing their leaders. When you come in and you're showing this weakness, you're showing this defeat, even though you're not in a specific event or on the carpet at that moment, people are still watching. And in yourself, right, you're breeding this attitude. So you've been very vocal in a lot of the programs that you build about quit. Don't let the quit in. There is no option to quit. Quitting is, there's no optionality here at all to have this discussion. Right. Can you talk about that? And when you have to force yourself to suppress those emotions and those feelings and rise above it and channel that energy, why is that so important?
So I don't know if I told you this back when we first met, but I didn't make it to selection my first time. I got medically dropped because all metatarsals in my feet they were grade 3 stress fractures on all 5, all 10 toes. Because I came from a first cav, it was a heavy mech unit. And I thought I was rocking with the right stuff.
Hanging out on tanks.
Well, yeah, I was on APC. I was a combat engineer at the time, but when I trained up, I thought which was the right way. I went out and bought this, what I call a Cadillac rucksack, right? And there was a frame built in it, and I could put 80 pounds in it, and I was walking, and I'm like, oh, I'm good. And then I walked on, concrete on sidewalks the whole time. And then when you get to selection, there's no damn sidewalks there. Nope. It's all sand, man.
And if you find a sidewalk, you are lost. You are vastly lost, and you're not going to be here tomorrow because you have failed.
Yeah, you are outside of the box. But yeah, so I totally trained up wrong, and the doc's like, hey, you can continue and really mess yourself up, or you come back, I'll med drop you, and you can come back in a year. And I was like, I asked him pinpointedly, I was like, what would you do? He's like, I'd come back in a year. I was like, okay, then that's what I'll do. And so you go back and you reassess yourself, right? And like, hey, I trained up totally wrong. I didn't, so I went back and I sold my good Alice pack. Well, I didn't sell it. I traded it in. I went to the Army surplus store. I was like, hey, I'll give you this. And I want this old school Alice pack and two quart canteens. And that guy was like, done. You know what I mean? Because he just came out ahead exponentially.
That's the equivalent of like the cost of 5 Alice packs.
Right. Exactly. You go back and you reassess it. I didn't walk on a concrete thing, nothing, no more. Every time I went and trained, I found trails, uneven terrain, and I was at Fort Hood at the time in Texas. But you just gotta, man. But once you find that you can do something, and you know what I mean, it's like that high, that bam, damn, I can do that. You know what I mean? Or you look at the guy when I went back, I was like, if that motherfucker can make it, I can. You know what I mean?
There's always motivation in looking at those.
Oh yeah, no, you know what I mean? They all had Green Berets on. I was like, if that dude can do it, I can fucking, you know what I mean? And you just got.
That's what I thought about you when I met you. Yeah. I was like, if he could do it, I can do this.
Yes, of course, right? You know what I mean? Because it's the same. Everybody puts their pants on one leg at a time, right? But you got to come up with, your why, of why you want to do this. You know what I mean? Because you're going to push, and it hurts. You know what I mean? It's going to hurt. But once you do that and you feel it, and you can do it at any moment. You know what I mean?
Well, I think the why is important, and you brought it up, so we're going to go there. But You actually said that your why, your life calling, was to be a special forces operator, and you said that you put, quote, 110% into all your athletic pursuits: baseball, football, wrestling, soccer, virtually any athletic activity that I could get my hands on. When I joined the U.S. Army, it was no different. I set the highest expectations for my time there and was determined to exceed them. My first goal was to become a U.S. Army Special Forces soldier, also known as a Green Beret, then become an officer and leader in the same organization. And you did that. And so when you came into the Army, you said you were in First Cav. Let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, why'd you come into the Army? Why did you make that choice in the first place? And then once you were there and you're in this heavy mech unit, you realize, I think I can do more.
Right. Yeah. So I joined in 1987. Long
That's it.
time
I was
ago,
I was
right?
7. I was
Yeah,
7.
yeah. So my wife was 7 at the time too. So 18 right out of high school, and really didn't have a direction. And at the time when I was a senior in high school, I wasn't joining the military. I didn't know what my path was going to be, and so I joined just to get away from the environment that I was. I grew up in a lovely place called Hammond, Indiana. I really value what it brought to me as a person. It's totally different than most places. It's on the south side, in between the south side of Chicago and Gary, Indiana. So I don't know if you know where that could be. Gary's a lovely place, and south side of Chicago is even a nicer, lovely place. So it brought some diversity in how I was raised, right? And the struggles is really real there. The steel mills all were, shutting down, and there just really wasn't nowhere to go. And I was like, my dad was in the Marine Corps prior to Vietnam. And so I told my dad, I went to the recruiter, Dad, I'm going to join the Corps. And he's like, the fuck you are. so
That's right. My dad told me to join the Air Force or the Coast Guard. That was his recommendation. And in retrospect, he may have been right, but
yeah, in retrospect. So I went back he's like, you're going to go back, you're going to come back with COAs of all the other branches and see which one gives you the best bang for your buck. And Air Force wouldn't even see me because my ABSFAB scores at the time were so hideous, and I wasn't going to ride on no ship for 6 months at a time because he told me the horror stories when he was in the Corps about it. So
I got to share a bed with 3 people.
Right, yeah. Hunt bucking? No, man, that's disgusting. So, you come in, and I came in, and you're doing your job, and it's like, there's more. You know what I mean? There's what else is out there, right? Besides, because I was a combat engineer, I was like, there's got to be something better than this riding in this heavy mechanized, APC thing, and so you start looking for things that's going to tax you and challenge you more, and you find special forces, and it's like that's it. You know what I mean? And you put that on the calendar. It's like, I'm going to try this. I'm going to put everything into it that I can, and hell, it worked out. It wasn't easy, I'll tell you that. It was challenging. But once you meet it, you can do it. So, that I went through the Q course twice, because you got to do it as an Echo and Alpha. When I went back through the second time as an Alpha, I was like, I'm gonna murder this fucking thing,
Well, you knew what to expect.
Right, exactly. But and I'm gonna lead from the front. And no enlisted guy is barely, what I mean. There was a couple. I was older too. I was 10 years senior to everybody else, even the officers. But I was like, I'm going to murder all of you guys. It doesn't matter, And I was like the third in my class physically, Well,
so you went so you spent your time in First Cav, and then you went into Special Forces. You were a communications sergeant in Special Operations, and then you decide, okay, I'm going to go to OCS, and this was like 2003, 2004 timeframe when we met, because the goal is to go then lead soldiers, right. Mm-hmm. And then you become a special operation, a Special Forces officer, where now you're commanding a team, and you and I were peers at that time, going back to group. Talk about the difference in the organization, right? And when you were in your first several years, in the first half of your career, when as an enlisted operator, and you were a communications sergeant on the teams, the world was a different place. I mean, this was pre 9/11. This was in the 90s, right? It was very much like if we do something, we're lobbing a whole bunch of cruise missiles, and as George Bush famously said after 9/11, I don't want to launch a whole bunch of cruise missiles into a tent in the middle of nowhere. We got to actually take action. And now it's post 9/11, and everyone's ready to kick someone's ass. And at times, it doesn't even matter who's going to get their ass kicked, but someone's getting their ass kicked, and we're there to do it. And Special Forces led that charge. Can you talk about the difference in the organization and really just these total polar opposites of your career in these two time frames?
Yeah. So pre 9/11, that's when I was enlisted regular Army. post, I was at the Echo course, the 18 Echo course, when that second plane hit. I watched that live at Bryant Hall at the CQ desk.
Wow.
Going through language school, and I had a couple more months until I actually finally got to don my beret and get my tab. So I just remember when that second plane hit, we got put on break when the first one, it was like, and we all went down to the CQ to see what's going on, and it's there, on TV. And I remember when that second plane hit, and I just looked at the brass crowd of all future special forces guys. I was like, fuck, this shit just got real. You know what I mean? It just like, it went, because prior to that, I was in Bosnia, and I seen SF dudes running around with their hats, cocked back up, sunglasses on, hands in their pocket, and you're like, that's what the fuck I want to be. You know what I mean? I want to be that cool guy. and then when you see that second plane hit, you're like, it just got real. You know what I mean? It just changed. It just changed the whole dynamics of what I was going to do. But it's like, okay, it's time to pull them big boy pants up and buckle them down, because now it's game on now, because you just fucked with the wrong goddamn country.
Well, Chris Miller talked about that in episode 25. In our 9/11 episode, we had a former Secretary of Defense, Chris Miller, and he was a company commander in Special Forces on 9/11, and he talks about that same thing, just being in the team room, being there when the planes hit, and then everybody looking at each other saying, "Hey, the cool days are over. Like we're at work now. We're at war." And he talks about how they knew instantly what this meant for that organization.
Right. Yeah. I knew it instantly when it happened. And then you know what I mean. I was still an enlisted guy, and I finished up and went on the teams in first group. And again, you see the same. You see an officer, and you're like, he's not no smarter than I am. You know what I mean? And physically wise, I know he can't fucking touch me with a pole, 10-foot pole, physically wise. So, hell, I'm gonna do it.
And so we met at OCS. We go through that, and we had some just really interesting times there, right? As you're in this class for 14 weeks, and they're teaching
16.
you.
It was 16. You're 2 weeks short. 16
am I 2 weeks short?
Oh my God, it was 4 months,
gosh.
and I hated every goddamn minute of it.
You did. You see, for me, I didn't know any better, so I was like, "Hey, look, we just got to get at this thing, whatever." They want me to fold my shirt in a 4-inch square. The shirt doesn't even fold into a 4-inch square. It's literally too big. It doesn't work like that. And then they come in and they look at it and be like, "It's 4.2 inches," and they trash all your stuff, and you're redoing it again. It instilled discipline, though, don't you think?
Yeah. I mean, remember, I was the guy that when we had those big inspections, I came through everybody's wall locker and inspected everybody's thing to make sure it was just just helping all of you guys out. That was my job. And and then I remember the very last inspection that that you did with the colonel came in, and I had helped. We stayed up all night buffing the floors. Everything was perfect. And he comes in, and those old school, the camouflage jackets, what are those called? Whatever jacket it was, right?
Yeah, before the Gore-Tex.
Yeah, before the Gore-Tex. It was the old school. It was great. But he reached up and he grabbed my pocket on mine, because I helped all of you guys out, right? And he reached up and grabbed the pocket, and it scrunched, and it made a noise, and I was like, oh, fuck it. And so he
That's what the candy bars are.
Yeah, he opened it up, and he pulls out this wrapper.
No, I was joking.
No, I'm dead serious. He pulls out a wrapper, and it's a protein bar wrapper, right? And I'm like, son of a, he's like, where'd this come from? And I was like, and I'm like, when did I have that protein bar? I was like, I was on a J set in Nepal. And he was like, oh, okay. And put it on and kept on moving. I was like, wow, great answer, man. And I was thinking fuck, I just failed. You know what I mean? I'm going to get recycled. I don't want to do this 16 weeks again. But yeah, he was like, oh, wow, great answer. And he just kept on moving and kept on going. And I was like, well, thank goodness, man.
This is not contraband, I swear.
It wasn't. And then, you know what I mean? And and I was processing, and I'm like, man, Oh, and then I was like, oh shit, we were in the field, and I got that thing. But the first thing that came out of my mouth is I was in Nepal on a J set when I went to the Nepalese mountaineering course and went up to we were up by Annapurna and Jamsam, and we had just climbed. I think it was like 23. Oh my God, you talk about pressure in your head doing a mountaineering course. It was amazing, but it's the pain of. I don't know if you've ever been up that. Well, there's nowhere in the United States.
Only in an airplane.
Right. But just walking up that high, just the pressure, and so, yeah. Off topic, Fran, have you seen the one with the Nepalese Sherpa guy? He was a Gurkha, and then he just did the 14 peaks.
So
over.
Just last night, someone else brought this to my attention, another Green Beret, brought this to my attention and said, you have to interview this guy. So actually, he's up on one of the tabs on my computer right now because I have to figure out how to get to this guy because I got to get him on the podcast and we got to talk about this. But yeah, that incredible.
Physiologically wise, I don't see how he did it. Unless he did 6 months, 6 days, he climbed the 14 highest peaks in the world. Unbelievable. I won't. You know what I mean? It's baffling to me. And he got tested too. And the guy that's testing him, he's like, his numbers are outrageous. You know what I mean? And it's just like, that's a whole other level.
Yeah. I want to talk to him and I want to talk to Alex Hanold, the free solo. Guy.
Okay.
So for the listeners, I'm throwing this out there right now. If any listener can get me to either of these guys, hit me up on Instagram, LinkedIn, whatever. Shoot me a message because if you can connect me, I owe you big.
Yeah. So we just got off into a whole mountaineering thing. So I was on a mountain team.
Yeah. So was I.
I've been in Nepal. I was in Nepal twice, and we got to do we did base camp as a team when I was a team leader, and that was the coolest fucking thing. You land in Lukla, the most dangerous airport in the world, and it's on a cliff, and it's shooting a little plane that and goes up. And then we disembarked, and 116, they just came down off of it, and these guys were the party team, and we just got off, and we were going up, and we stopped, at Namche's Bazaar, and they're like, "Oh, you guys are the same kind of guys," and we're like, "No, we don't drink. Those guys are like fishes, man."
Yeah.
They were.
We train. They party. We train, then party. They just party.
Yeah. That's a Halo team. They don't care. We're the mountain. So, yeah.
Well, actually, I should mention it that just recently in the last couple of months, Mike Sorelli, the founder of Talent War Group and the author of Talent War, did that jump, and he did a big fundraiser supporting our partner, Special Operations Warrior Foundation, raising over $500,000. The goal raise over $500,000 to support Special Operations Warrior Foundation, who focuses on the families and the children of our fallen special operators and Medal of Honor recipients, providing them education for their life, regardless of how old they are, up all the way through college. And so, great organization. And so, yeah, part of Talent War Group, and our partner here on the podcast, they went out there, and Mike did that jump, and the pictures are awesome. So you got to go see those if anybody hasn't seen those yet. But that's the cool thing about special operations, right? Everybody kind of thinks, especially with the last 20 years in the global war on terror, right? Everybody kind of like, oh, well, you only went to Iraq and Afghanistan. And what we forget is that is really just for special forces. It's just a very small part of what we do. I mean, our teams are so dynamic. I mean, we were both on mountain teams. I mean, I got to work with countries all over the world on mountaineering. When we weren't deployed, we were doing mountaineering, to the point at which people were saying, why are you doing so much? You guys need to be home more. And it's like, no, we need to train. I mean, these are critical skills. And everybody was ski instructor certified, avalanche certified. And whether it was the winter when we were doing cold weather training, or it was the summer when we were doing climbing. I mean, it's just awesome to do all these things. And there's so many different opportunities that you get being in special operations. But it comes down to, I think, the character, right? Something that we talk about all the time on the podcast. And I think it's fitting to kind of bring it in here because fitness is a core component. You can't scuba dive. You can't mountaineer. You can't jump out of airplanes. You can't be combat effective in the way that we've seen it broadcast on television, jumping out of planes, running into houses, hanging off of helicopters. You can't do that unless you're physically fit. But All of these organizations, whether that be Green Berets, Rangers, MARSOC, SEALs, Air Force, we've mentioned them a few times. Skill matters, fitness matters, character matters more. Mike talked about it in the Talent War. We talk about it on every episode. Rich Davini, who's a former Navy SEAL, who wrote the book called The Attributes, and they talk about the 25 attributes that primarily the Navy SEALs use. He's going to be on the next episode, actually, our first episode of 2022, where we're going to talk to Rich, and we're going to bring him in, and we're going to expand the 9 that we've talked about for close to a year now, and we're going to start talking about 25. So he says there's like 35 or 40, but he's narrowed it down to 25. So I'm looking forward to having that conversation. But it really is character that defines someone's ability to succeed. And then ultimately, when they make it through these selection courses, are they going to succeed? But every organization, the ones we've named here, they actually use the same set of attributes or character traits, but they focus and weight some differently than others. And for example, the Green Berets focus on integrity, courage, perseverance, personal responsibility, professionalism, adaptability, team ability, capability. But the SEALs, it's all about physical courage, moral courage, humility, creativity, team ability, and resiliency. So some of them are the same, but there's others that are brought in because you're asked to do different things. In your career, in Special Forces, you worked with people from all different branches. We all did. And also, really one of the coolest parts about being in Special Operations, unlike the regular Army, is you get to interact with the other service members at such a deep fundamental level. When you look at being a Green Beret yourself, working with those from the other organizations, and then you think about these different character traits, can you maybe spend a couple of minutes giving your perspective on what makes a great Green Beret versus a Ranger versus a MARSOC operator or an Air Force, a PJ versus a Navy SEAL? Because I think your perspective is really valuable here.
Right. So my number one that you hit is integrity, right? Especially when you're the leader, when you're a team leader, your integrity has to be the utmost of anything that you do, right? Man, it's that one thing that it got one time I was in Nepal and my commander questioned my integrity, and he found out immediately when he did that I had I turned on.
That conversation went south.
Oh, it went south for him real quick, and he realized that he had questioned, you know what I mean, and he had actually questioned it, and
it's insulting. If you're a person of integrity, it's insulting when somebody questions your integrity.
Yeah. And he knew that I had murder in my eyes when he did that. And he was like, whoa, that's not what I meant. I was like, okay, well, you better expand upon that. And he's like, oh, well, you were late. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. We just been on a 7-month deployment. We just did 4 JSETs back to back with JCS exercise, 2 of them in between that. And you pulled my team from being off for 30 days to coming to this JSET just to appease you to get all 6 teams, ODAs from your company here to make your bullets look better. And he didn't like that too much, when you put somebody on the spot. Or, you know what I mean? You just blow him off a little bit. But he had questioned, my integrity. And that's just a story that I don't take that lightly, because everything I do, coming back from an enlisted to an officer, I tried to protect my guys as much as I could, and we were just running. It was just nonstop when you're a team leader, and when you question integrity, it's not a good thing.
Well, it's funny because integrity is one of those that actually is weighted high for all special operations, regardless of service.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I was in the Philippines, and one of my controllers, who I luckily got to work with again, his integrity was questioned in Holo, and I didn't know it at the time because I was the XO. They removed him because they didn't believe what he had said, and all you had to do is just go back to the logbook that he flew up for 24 hours and he was back, but he's a controller. That's what he does, and an Army officer questioned it, And I wasn't there at the time, so they gave him the boot, and he had to go up to Zambo for for a moment. And then when you hear the backstory on it, you're like, God dang it, it's just. But then to run back into somebody, into a sister service, another special operation guy later in your career after I retired, was pretty unique. To expand upon everything, and I just hate when your integrity is questioned.
So what makes a good Green Beret versus like a Navy SEAL? Because often and I think it's important because so many people that come to me and they'll be like, is a Green Beret like a Navy SEAL? And I have to look and say, no. I'm like, what do you mean?
I don't. The difference, as far as the attributes go, I think they're really close, right? It's, what I mean? You can't really divide that, because we all got a drive that's beyond other people, you know what I mean, than the normal person. It's about your drive, and you have to be able to overcome those things. For us, we know we're not, if you're not on a scuba team, you're not getting in the water, right? And then me, for the last 7 years working close to water with the Air Force, man, and then I did pre-dive as well when I was enlisted, and that sucked. But that water is a humbling experience, right? Getting in the water and doing breath holds and bobs and traveling and stuff like that. And until you do that, it's just so unique, and their physical ability to overcome that, to really calm their mind, to know that they have enough oxygen is just. It's very unique, and it's something that one of those things is like, shit, I should have did it, that I keep on kicking myself in the butt about, is that you just don't realize that you still have air in your body.
Well, that's why physical courage, I think, is so high up on their list, right? And
yeah.
I mean, I look at the difference between these organizations, and I think they're different mission sets. Right? Mm-hmm. And so I think about, people come to me all the time and they're like, I want to go into the military. I want to be in special operations. I don't really know what to do. And kind of my advice to them is always, well, you got to do your research, right? And you got to think about what kind of mission do you actually want to do, right? And then that helps to then drive that decision process, right? Where you say, well, the SEALs are phenomenal in the water. I mean, that's where they live. They're a great direct action force. Direct action means, we go onto an enemy target, we kick down the doors, we conduct hostage rescue, right? We eliminate threat. Phenomenal at those types of waterborne operations, boarding ships. I mean, you think about Captain Phillips. I was recently talking about that with a couple of my SEAL friends. I mean, just a perfectly executed SEAL mission. Skydive onto a Navy destroyer, right? And then through the use of snipers, eliminate 3 pirates, right? And then recover the hostage, being Captain Phillips. But then you look at the Green Berets and you say, well, what do the Green Berets do? They conduct what we call unconventional warfare. They go into occupied countries, whether that be through an occupying power or a government that is not friendly. And then our entire mission there is to overthrow that government, overthrow that occupying force. And that 9/11, post 9/11, with the Taliban supporting Al-Qaeda and occupying Afghanistan, when we went in there with a limited number of special operations Green Berets, we defeated the Taliban very quickly with the power of the U.S. Air Force, and we removed that occupying power. Now, we can argue all day long what happened post that, going into 2002 for the next, close to 20 years. But that was a perfectly executed Green Beret mission, as well as equipping and arming, foreign armies in Southeast Asia, all throughout Africa. I mean, great special operations missions, which you've been a part of so many of those.
Right. Yeah. So you do have to. My clients with 18 Alpha Fitness, they'll come to me and they're like, "Hey, yeah, I just did a bit of the research. I had signed up for the SF1, but I really want to be or TAC-P or a combat controller, or I changed the SEAL." I'm like, "Oh, great. You know what I mean? I'll go in there and I'll change their program because it's different. It's totally different, and I'm trying to prepare them for success in that. When you switch that button." But yeah, you have to find out what you want to do. And pretty cool. It's not a cool story. After I finished that 18 Alpha course there back at Bragg, I got a call from. I went to Okinawa. Got a call from the XO of one of the companies there, and he's like, "Hey, we're gonna keep you there a little bit longer so you can go to a school." And I was like, "Well, I don't want to go to that school because if I wanted to do that mission, I would have went and tried out for the big boys." And he was baffled. I was like, "I want to go do UW," and he's like, "Really?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "But we're at war." I was like, "I don't give a shit. I want to do unconventional warfare. I want to work by, with, and through people, and not put my guys as much harm's way. It's their nation. They need to do it. That's what our mission is. It's not DA. It is one of our components of it, but our main mission is unconventional warfare,
which is fun.
Oh, which is
so
amazing.
Different.
I got to do it in the Philippines.
Every country is different,
right? Yeah. You know what I mean? And if you weren't in Afghanistan at the beginning, you tried to do it, but it wasn't to the extent of when they first went in.
Yeah, I remember being in Nigeria shortly after, right after in 2014, the 200 schoolgirls were kidnapped by Boko Haram, and America went crazy. Michelle Obama was posting signs on social media, "We have to help these people," and so they deploy a couple of us down there. And it's like us and the British Special Operations and French Special Operations, and we're sitting with the Nigerians, and the Nigerians are like, "We don't have a problem with Boko Haram." And it's like, hey, the rest of the world thinks you do. Right. But it's so dynamic, right? And then the charge becomes quickly, right? In that meeting, you realize, wow, I thought I came down here to a welcoming environment where they were going to say, yeah, give us money, give us equipment, give us guys, put them on the ground, train our people, we'll help fight Boko Haram, to we don't have a problem, we don't want your money, we don't want your people here, we don't want anything to do with you. And then having to figure out, okay, well, how do we get them to understand that this is a problem? Right. And then you have to start building that relationship, you have to start building that trust, you have to start building that unity, right? And then start to convince them that there actually is a problem. But they've got to be affected, and you can't make them do it.
Right. If they don't want to do it, they're not going to do it.
All people, regardless of the industry that they're in, they're shaped by the leaders that they serve under, both good and bad leaders. They actually say that we learn more from the bad leaders than we do from the good leaders. I would actually say that we probably learn an equal amount from each. It's just when we see bad leadership, we immediately recognize it as bad leadership. And then we say, oh, okay, I can't do those couple of things that this person does, or sometimes maybe a lot of things that somebody does. When we recognize good leadership, we often don't realize it's great leadership until later on. And then later on, we're put in situations and we think, oh, wow, I reacted in this situation because I was influenced by this leader, however long ago, and now I've emulated that, and that was good leadership. You had a 26-year career in the military. You said, 35 years across the Department of Defense. You were enlisted. You were an officer. You were a DOD, a Department of Defense civilian. You worked for a lot of leaders. When we met in Officer Candidate School, I would say that we were under the command of one of the worst leaders that I've seen in my career. Seriously, in my career, like whether it was in the military, before the military, post-military, I don't think that I've ever been exposed to a worse leader than the person who led there. And I don't even know if I should name him, because it's almost
I don't even remember his name because he was so bad.
It's almost like naming a terrorist, right? You're like, they have no name. They just, they need to be eliminated. They have no, but I know that the guy was sent to Guam, right, to do like a low-level staff position in Guam after that command. I want to ask you about the best leader you ever worked for, and it's okay if it's me.
You weren't my leader.
I know, right? I know. And also the worst leader you ever worked for. And what do you take away from each one of those?
So my best leader that I ever had was Dorsey Rogers. I think he's
phenomenal guy.
Yeah, 2 or 3 stars now. So
phenomenal.
That's when I did the switch from enlisted to become an officer, and leading up to that,
he was the 10th group commander.
Right, and I was in 3rd Battalion, 10th group as a chemical officer. and I got lucky to get back into special operations as being a camo. I just like showed my long tab, was like, hey, I got that, but it all worked out. But
Sir, you need a gas mask.
So I did NBC training one time at 10th Group, and they're like, that is, I was like, this is a waste of time. Anyway, they'd already been, they've been established, right? And we're at RPC in Baghdad at the Royal Palace Complex, and I get there, I think it's OIF 3, and I walk in, and Dorsey's like, he's like, nice to meet you. And I was like, hey, nice to meet you, sir. And he's like, hey, you're gonna go work in the S2 shop.
The Intel shop.
Right. And I was like, okay, sure. He's like, yeah, our camo, he can handle the air. Anybody can fucking handle the air. But you're going to go work in the S2 shop because I need you in the S2 shop. I was like, whatever you need, sir. You know what I mean? And I go in the S2 shop, and I'm, boom, I'm doing daily reports. I mean, 8 hours of grinding, you know what I mean? And our S2 guy at the time, I forgot his name, but he was a phenomenal Intel guy, and I'm in there busting my ass. We gave out this report every week. We had a meeting, and like everybody from the three moons came down to hear our S2's Intel brief because it was that good. And but he just led it the right way. We got all the everything that we wanted to, puck the name, whatever. We put it into this report, and then he would dial it down, to the easiest level, and. Then later on, I've been doing that for 60 to 90 days. And later on, he comes in, he's like, hey, I need you to go be a Siege Soto fellow. No. I'm like, okay. You know what I mean? I'm like, okay. I'm like, who am I replacing? He's like, you're going to replace a light colonel into crit. I was like, I'm just a butter bar. He's like, that don't fucking matter.
Like 4 ranks ahead of you.
Yeah.
Right?
He's like, that doesn't fucking matter. You got that long tab on you. That says it all. I'm
second
like,
lieutenant,
yes, sir.
best rank in the Army is a second lieutenant. You have some level of minimal authority because you're an officer, but nobody expects you to know anything, right?
Right.
So you get to, and so for you, right? I mean, for me, being a second lieutenant was one thing. I didn't know anything, right? So I had just come in the Army. I mean, I'm in the Army 18 months. And all of a sudden, I'm an officer, right? And now you're in charge, and everybody looks at you and they're like, bro, you know nothing. Just sit in the corner and shut up. Here you are, right? You have a decade of service. Now you're a second lieutenant, right? And you're going in, and you still get to be like, I don't know anything.
No, he did
not. But they didn't let you out. They didn't let you have that one.
No, he didn't let me play that card. So I had to. He's like, you're going to Siege DeSoto for a week. You're going to learn everything you need to know. You're reporting to blah blah blah. And so the lieutenant colonel had to come back and do inventories because he was changing over command. And it was only like a 30-day that I was going to be there. But what I'm getting at with Dorsey is he challenged you to do things that were outside the norm, right? And not too many leaders let you. They don't give you that room to do something that that you've never done, or that you don't expect yourself to do. A good leader lets you, give you that rope, and he's going to let you die or hang on it or live. And I think I did a pretty good job. I had to report to a 2-star general twice a week into crit, to the Rainbow Division commander, and to his chief of staff. Every day I had a chief of staff, and the only time I got questioned by the chief of staff is because the big boys when it did an operation that night, and we had no idea about it. You know what I mean? So that's like, I had to figure it out. But just given enough rope to succeed and to show, and basically showing that you can actually do anything if you want to, you know what I mean? And then we'll go back to the worst leader. And the worst leader, man, I had so many. They're the ones that it's micromanaged, you know what I mean? Everything that you do, it's, here, this is all I want, this is it, you know what I mean? They don't give you the rope to expand mentally, physically, anything. They're like, nope, this is it. That's all I want you to do, and that's it. And they're like, okay, here you go. That's it. That's all you want me to do. That's it. That's all I'm going to give you.
How do we?
So it's the challenge.
Up,
it's the challenge.
Like when you have a leader that you identify, okay, this is a bad leader, right? And it doesn't matter if it's in the military or any organization, right? You very rarely, when you identify that you have a bad leader, do you get to walk into the office and stand up in front of everyone and say, this person's a terrible leader. Here's what we're actually going to do. You've got to manage that. You still have to go to work. You still have to figure this out. So when you identify that you have this bad leader, how do you then motivate yourself, keep the team together, motivate around you, and still try to find a way to be successful?
Man, it's just it's hard. Because again, those positions, there's always somebody up above me, but I'm still a leader of other men. And I tell them just to be, focused on the mission. You know what I mean? Our mission is this. Don't think about what he can affect. Just focus on our mission and what we can affect as our team. We can't worry about what's happening up and out, right? That's my job. Let me worry about what's going up and out, down and in. We can manage that. Just worry about what's down and in. I'll worry about what's up and out.
That's such a great point. I mean, the mission is what binds and brings everybody together. It's what unifies them. It's the mission. It's understanding the vision. I mean, in the military, we call it commander's intent, right? What did they always say? That you had this long, they called it a 5-paragraph op order. You had this whole thing, but really the only thing that mattered was what's the mission statement and what's the commander's intent. If I have those two things, then I can be successful, and I'll figure it out. Nothing else really matters. So when you're confronted with these leaders who are less than superior,
stellar.
We'll put it that way, stellar, then can you find that mission? Can you be grounded in that mission and then unify everyone around that?
Yeah, it's where I was just at. I had no idea what the mission was, or the desired intent, or the desired end state. It was never like bought out. You know what I mean? And I always asked about it because you know how many MDMP processes we've gone through, how many op orders we created as a captain, and you're like, I need something. I need a tangible thing. I need to know what our mission is and the commander's intent. And I could never really pull it out where I was just at. And that's one of the reasons why I left, is because I couldn't motivate any, because I had other subordinates under me at the time, and I was like, I don't know what this is. Do you? You know what I mean? Lower than me, and he's like, I don't know what to do. I think we're just all spinning our wheels here. And then I would ask my leader, and they're just like, I don't know what it is. And then I even went up higher, and he's like, you're absolutely right. I do need to come up with a mission and an intent. And I'm like, yes. So everybody can work off. There's a reason why the military is created. It's the unity of this mission, intent, and the desired end state. It's pretty simple. You know what I mean? If you do all these things, it makes the unit so much more cohesive. But if you don't have a mission and desired end state or an intent, you can't do nothing with that.
And that was the driving force behind you saying, okay, I'm going to exit Department of Defense service in whatever capacity, and I'm going to go out and build my own thing, and that thing's going to be 18 Alpha Fitness, right? That's that driving factor we talk about with entrepreneurs, with founders, which then brings, this is a really cool story for you because you're not a software engineer, right? You don't know about app design, and here you are, and you have this idea of, I can create this fitness app that people can use, and we've talked about it. Last 12 to 18 months, you have seen really significant growth in the company at an exponential rate. We talked about where we've come from as a military, as special operations. Your app, your vision, your mission as you see it now is to prepare that next generation of special operator, that next generation of folks who are going to go out there, answer our nation's call at the most elite level, and protect us well into the future. We're entering this post-global war on terror period where historically after large conflicts, World War II, Vietnam, right, Korea, we see the military drops to what we call below the fold for people who still read newspapers, right? It's folded in half, and the important stuff's on the top, right? And on the bottom side is all the unimportant stuff. And the really unimportant stuff goes to page 2. But right. It's not going to be front and center for the foreseeable future, which means that inevitably there's less focus on things like recruiting from the force. There will be, but it won't be front and center in terms of of getting people into the force. We run a volunteer force across our entire military now, so we are reliant on people having a desire and jumping into these types of roles, and we need really smart people of the highest caliber to jump into the military, because these leaders will set the vision for so much of the future to come. So much of what you're doing is really almost supporting that recruiting effort, because you're building these soldiers and giving them a platform to succeed. How do we keep the focus on them over the course of the next several years? How do we drive that next generation of talented leaders to join the military, adopt what special operations is bringing to the world and to the country in terms of the protection of our nation, and get them out there and do great things like we were able to do in our careers?
So there's not always going to be war, right? And I was fortunate enough to be in the military prior to, major conflicts. Right now, what I tell the guys is like, hey, you guys got the best opportunity now. Now you get to be a cool guy, a real cool guy now again. And you get to go affect so many more people, when you go train with your partner host nations, and you get to, show the world of who we really are. We're not always, we weren't always seen as, just because we're at war, we weren't seen as the greatest people in the world, because war, brings out the ugliest in you. Now that it's post-war, now this should be able to bring the best out of Americans. And then I only want the best that's going to be in special operations to lead that charge, because without them, we, people that volunteer for this, force, we have to instill in them that it's okay. All right. You might mess up, but it's okay. But we want you to succeed. You know what I mean? You don't have to be at the fold. You can be right there, right? You're still at the tip of the spear, because if it turns on, you're ready. All right. You got to think that just because there isn't a war right now, that you are ready to go if another 9/11 happens.
Yeah. 9 a.m. on September 11th, 2001, our country was not at war.
Right.
By 10 o'clock, we were at war for the next 20 years. Mm-hmm. And we have not identified yet who that new enemy is. And that's a conversation we've had, a few times with General McChrystal. We had it with former Secretary Chris Miller. We had it with General Corelli, former Army Vice Chief, a couple episodes ago as well. Of there's an undefined enemy out there who seeks to do us harm, and our charge right now is to not rest on our laurels and say everything is fine, because we can wake up one day and it can not be very quickly.
Yep.
As we close out, the Jedburghs had to do three things every day to win and be successful. They had to be able to shoot, they had to be able to move, they had to be able to communicate. If they did these three core foundational tasks with excellence and a high degree of proficiency every day, when other challenges came their way, similar to physical fitness like we talked about, they could focus their effort on those other tasks. They didn't have to worry about executing their core competencies well. What are the three things that you do every day to set the conditions for your success?
First thing when I wake up, I do about a 10-minute mobility. I take every joint through a full range of motion. And then that breathing thing, I do about 5 to 7 minute breathing technique. It's by Wim Hof, which is he's a unique individual in himself. And then I eat relatively healthy. I'm not saying that I measure my food. I don't do any of that, but I eat relatively healthy. I try to not eat fast food as much. The only thing that I do like out of McDonald's are the French fries. If you don't like
it's the best thing on the menu by far.
It's by far. It's so, like me and my wife would just drive through and be like, we would like 2 orders of large fries, please. But you know what I mean? Just think about what you're putting into your body, because what you put into your body is what you're going to get out of it. And then, lastly, what I want to bring up is just move. You have to move. We're in such a stagnant environment now with all social media, everything that's on our phones. We just sit still. And yesterday, I couldn't even believe it. My wife put me on the timer because I was on the phone, and she asked me a question, and 3 minutes went by and the alarm went off, and I, and then I answered the question after it, and I was just so mad at myself for being so focused on the doggone device that I just threw it in the glove box. I was like, God. So and that's not not now that I'm cognizant of it, that's going to be one of those things is like I'm going to put the doggone device away for like 2 hours out the day and just focus on myself.
When you put the device in the glove box, how long did it take for the anxiety to set in that you didn't have the device?
Oh, I went running.
Oh, there you go. We got that.
I got to go do something.
Yeah, that's great. So, number one, mobility and breathing. Number two, eat well. Number three, you got to move. I love those three. They're so important and so fitting for what you're doing. We talked about the 9 characteristics of elite performance. We threw out our next episode about the 25 attributes. We talked about character being a defining factor in identifying somebody's likelihood for success and then eventually their success when they enter special operations or any organization. I take these attributes and these character traits and I think about my guests and I give them one. And for you, I really look at effective intelligence. I see effective intelligence across your entire brand, across the entire program that you're building, across my experience of meeting you, becoming your friend, spending so much time together through our careers. But effective intelligence is the ability to take the aggregate experiences of our past, all the things we've been through, learn from them, and then apply them to our future decisions, apply them to the way that we present ourselves, we conduct ourselves, we lead organizations, we lead others. You've been so effective in that. You were so instrumental and so important to me and the other young guys who came in straight out of college, and those were formidable times that we'll never forget. And we had a cadre, they were okay. Like I said, the commander was one of the worst leaders I ever saw. But I truly believe that had it not been for you and the other senior guys who were in OCS.
Steve Bolton.
Yeah, Steve and a couple other guys who were still in, who
Steve McClare,
who just just amazing. Steve McCullough was my roommate. You guys set the standard. And you set the standard for all of us, and we continue to see that today. We saw that through our careers, and I'm almost coming up on 6 years being out, and I still think about the lessons that you guys taught us, the example that you set for what excellence was, and showed us that even though we were young officers and we were going into the infantry and guys were going to field artillery and armor, that if we wanted to be elite, because you all came out of special operations, that this was the standard that had to be set. And I attribute so much of my success and my ability to get through the first couple of years and then enter into special forces, be selected and serve for 9 years in special forces to everything that I learned from you and those other guys. So I thank you for that. I thank you for your partnership. I thank you so much for jumping in on supporting the podcast and continue to spread the message that we're spreading. And I'm so honored to sit here with you today. And I look forward to a great 2022. What's your New Year's resolution?
Oh, New Year's resolution is I hate doing New Year's resolutions.
That's why I'm asking, because everybody hates New Year's resolutions.
I hate. So I guess is to grow my brand, right? It's the 18 Alpha Fitness out there more to the, I want to be up there known as one of the elite premier getting guys ready for special operations. I think I have what it takes. I've shown it. I've done it. I proved it multiple times. And then you get a guy that's the difference between other strength coaches and other programs out there. You got strength coaches that they might have worked with special operations and now they got a company and they're there. But they didn't live the life, and I lived the life to the fullest, both enlisted and as an officer, and then, challenging myself more as a strength coach. And then now trying to help the future generation I want to help the future generation as much as I can, to defend this country. Because I really, at the end of the day, what I did, besides, my why was so my kids and my grandkids didn't have to go to war.
And we may very well be there and have achieved that why. Well, mine's to get fit. and
Oh,
it's
well.
going to be to follow this program on 18 Alpha Fitness. So thanks so much for joining me. It's about the why. We can't quit. We got to get out there and do. Let's prepare that next generation. We owe it to ourselves. We owe it to the future. We'll see you in 2022.
Later. Thanks for having me, Fran. It's been an honor.